Hello, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to another video. We are going to be starting chapter 8 in A Guide for Lightworkers by Archangel Michael. Also, Saratoga Ocean is the author, the person, the channeler, I guess you would say. And as a reminder, we will do our best to listen to this communication, to take in this communication using our heart rather than our intellectual mind, as is stated very early on in this book. So if you're just happening to catch this video, I will just remind you or share with you that the author and also the person who channels explains that this book is not to be a book that you take the information in with your intellectual mind, with this thinking mind, that you want to sort of focus your intention of listening with your heart. So with no further ado, let's get started on chapter 8, Who You Are in the Universe. Now we are ready to talk about your center in life and offer you an opportunity to completely shift from where you have probably been living in terms of what you may have assumed was your only option. The first thing to shift in this regard is the context in which you have viewed your life. On planet Earth, we are basically unaware of the universe around us. We live as though our existence on this planet is all there is. This produces an immense distortion in our perspective, which we have no way of noticing because in this type of isolation, there is nothing else to see except our highly limited picture. Your infinite self knows better than this, but unless that self becomes fully conscious on this planet, nothing will appreciably change. So let us start with a full acknowledgement that we do indeed reside in a vast, incomprehensibly large universe. We do not have to know physically the entire map of the cosmos in order to be fully conscious of this fact. It is more about a sensation of where we are in time and space. The first thing to note is that we are definitely not limited to this tiny box called our finite perception of planet Earth. Unfortunately, most human beings do not consider any of this as an issue. They are content to believe that our universe of experience consists mainly on Earth. They might include the existence of the moon in this, but only as something that we observe from afar. As for the rest of it, they will generally not acknowledge the existence of much else, unless science points it out to them. And science does not have the capacity to point out very much at all. So if you plan to wait around for science to sanction the existence of everything out there, you could be waiting around for quite a few lifetimes. Now, it goes without saying that we can easily agree that the universe is big as an intellectual concept. But this is not what we are talking about. We are talking about the possibility of a visceral, real, physical, and energetic experience of this vast cosmos that we live in, without a spaceship. Don't you find it curious that we don't have that already? After all, we actually do live in space. So many people inadvertently view space as something out there or out there. In fact, it is even called outer space. It is basically seen as something that has nothing whatsoever to do with our everyday lives. Yet it has everything to do with our everyday lives. How could it not? Do you actually believe that it simply doesn't exist just because we are physically blind and ignorant to how much this all directly is related to us personally? That idea or false belief is once again directly related to the ego. To know why that is, it is important to understand the language of the ego. The ego can only speak in linear sentences where words are strung together one at a time. Each word represents a thing, a concept, or an action that has already been known and experienced by people on this earth in its very tiny history of human existence. It basically takes the ego eons of time to learn anything new, and even longer to accept it. The ego simply will not acknowledge anything that has not first passed through its linear processing system and then managed to fit in with its already tiny worldview. This galaxy is far too big for the ego to absorb and comprehend, never mind the entire universe. It still struggles with our solar system, for heaven's sake. To the ego, unless you are a planetary scientist or astrophysicist, any mention of our solar system probably brings to mind a cardboard mobile with circles dangling from it, the kind you saw in class when you were forced to go to school. The ego is all about control. It wants to control your entire perception of everything. If what you perceive and experience is outside of the ego's domain of existence, then it will cut off that perception and say that it doesn't exist. And let's not forget that the ego is a veritable fortress of excuses and reasons why. Justification is never a problem for the always on guard sentry of the ego. We speak so much about the nature of ego because unless you understand the difference between it and your real self, you will always be trapped inside of the dream world that is fully and completely, that will fully and completely protect you. No, I read that wrong. You will always be trapped inside of the dream world that it fully and completely protects. Sorry, big difference. It protects. Yes, okay. You will continue to think that the ego is you and then wonder why you feel so frustrated with no way out. Understanding the nature of the ego and its makeup is the only way to open your eyes and give you a chance to free yourself from the enormous limitations that it imposes upon you and your experience. God did not create the ego. The ego is merely a byproduct of the first original lie, which also exists as the original source of fear. If fear is an experience of the absence of God, then you should understand that this is a direct result of that first original lie called, I am not God. The ego manifests as a default personality structure in an impossible world where there exists the illusionary experience of God is not here. Thus, such an experience can only be said to be the manifestation of a dream. The real you cannot operate in this dream world. Therefore, an alternate you manifests in the form of the ego to effectively operate and mirror the basic duality that forms the foundation of this place. This is why you can feel so confused much of the time. This is why it sometimes feels like there are so many opposing viewpoints that live inside of your consciousness. Why do you suppose we would suggest that the real you cannot operate in the dream world of the ego? It is because there are far too many conditions and limitations that must be preserved in order for that world to continue to exist. The finite world is structured on a principle of duality, where nothing is real and everything is an illusion. In truth, there is no such thing as good and evil where God is perceived as a finite thing, no matter how big that perception may be. As long as there is one tiny molecule that is perceived as a place where God is not, the entire universe becomes a manifesting finite illusion in your perception. The ego filters your natural perception of oneness and splits it into two things to effectively mirror the foundational principle of this finite world. So the real task at hand is to wake up to the presence of our true selves. To settle for this as a belief or conceptual knowing is utterly insufficient. In that case, it will merely sit at the back of our minds for some future date when we believe that it will be mysteriously activated through no special act of our own. This is simply not the case. If it were, it would have happened long before now. Let us begin this process of waking up by allowing ourselves to feel the physical existence of the universe that lives all around us. There is an enormous energy of stars and stellar organizations of matter, all of which exude their own powerful auras. There are interdimensional phenomena that literally dwarf this tiny planet out of existence in terms of sheer size. Yet, in spite of their presence of utterly massive proportions, these phenomena are also tiny when compared to something else. It is not at all important for our tiny physical brains to comprehend all of this. It is important to remember that our brains are really only designed for this world alone, and for the minuscule amount of matter in space that might be directly related to us. To try to use our earthly brains to comprehend the entire universe would be futile and rather silly. So give your brain a rest and allow your true intelligence factor to assist you here. The intelligence factor also cannot be comprehended by the linear earth mind, and fortunately, it doesn't have to be. The intelligence factor is perfectly capable of functioning on its own, without any need to be processed through a finite reality of experience. The reason that we propose asking you to open up and feel the presence of our vast interstellar universe is to allow your physical body to attune to something much bigger than its everyday existence here on Earth. It is vitally important to remember that our physical bodies indeed live in space. Just because we are on a planet that supports the unique makeup and structure of our physical selves, that in no way negates the fact that every moment that we are alive, we are indeed space dwellers in this enormous universe. One of the first things that you will have to be willing to do is temporarily discard everything you have heard about the vast distances in space, along with the assumptions that because these distances are so vast, they couldn't possibly have anything to do with us. Especially throw away the idea of light years as a means of measuring distances. This idea only reinforces the idea that everything revolves around our perception of Earth. The matter that makes up your entire physical body is actually interstellar matter. This matter is activated by our sun, and it is also influenced by interuniversal, interstellar events that are unbeknownst to us on any conscious level. Many of these events could never be recognized or measured by any technology that we possess or by any that could be developed in the future. So on a physical level, your body is extremely attuned to and is dependent upon these interstellar events. Imagine how tiny the Earth really is. It exists as merely a speck in the shape of a microscopic sphere. How big do you think the energy field of Earth really is when compared to a phenomenon that is more than many trillions of times bigger than this tiny sphere? And that numerical example is still quite small. How big is one person's tiny energy field when compared to that of our whole planet? We are pointing this out to show you that the idea of physical distance is not really a factor. It is much more useful to consider the sheer size and magnitude of all of these interrelated energy fields combined, of which our own tiny planet is definitely a part. Isn't it ironic, given these facts, that we here on Earth tend to view everything as a shortage of energy? What do you suppose might happen if you practice opening up to these vast fields of powerful interstellar energies and their absolutely huge auras? Can you allow yourself to be consciously touched by that which already touches you? Remember, you do not have to be able to name and identify everything in the universe in finite earthly terms in order to exist in a relationship to those things. There are not even enough words or concepts in all of the earth languages combined to even scratch the surface of such an idea. Just because you do not know the name and the location of a particular star, it doesn't mean that that star isn't there, correct? The ego would like you to think so, and it will certainly have you behave accordingly. If you believe that your identity lies inside of your teeny tiny physical earth embodiment, then all of these proposals will seem overwhelming and to the ego entirely unnecessary. The ego is incapable of fathoming anything outside of its tiny, tiny little framework of existence. You should remember this the next time you are tempted to regard the ego as such a high authority in your life. The idea of consciously connecting with the massive expanse of the entire physical universe is important because it represents a first step of you beginning to take full command of your existence in this universe. It represents you saying no to the ego. Believe it or not, you do have that right. You do not need a spaceship to live in this universe. You are already here. No matter where any physical spaceship may take you, you will still be no more here than you are right now. So what if you were to make it to Mars? Relatively speaking, that planet is closer to Earth than one skin cell on your hand is to the cell right next to it. It is closer to Earth than a single electron is to another in the very same atoms on your skin. The entire galaxy is as close as your own backyard, and a neighboring galaxy is as close as a bird flying over a tree in that backyard. So far, we have only spoken of the physical universe that exists in the same dimension of time and space that we are familiar with. Think about the primitive way in which we measure time. Everything is measured based upon a single rotation of our planet. We have no idea whatsoever about galactic time, intergalactic time, and interstellar time. And even those ideas are incredibly elementary. Now, consider for a moment the fact that there are multiple dimensions of time and space, again on a physical level. There are hidden pathways to different realities all over the universe. We really want you to understand the insanity of the bizarre and commonly held belief that Earth sets the standard for the existence of all else in the cosmos. The fact is that if you are 100% identified with your tiny existence here on planet Earth, then there is no conceivable way for you to know who you are in the universe. I hope we have succeeded in helping you begin to break up that conceptual straitjacket. Now we would like to teach you an exercise to help you expand your consciousness in a way that promotes your freedom from this conceptual morass of highly limited perception. I don't think this is a traditional exercise. It's just going to kind of go throughout a few paragraphs. So you may want to come back to it if you're really wanting to, I guess, give it a try, or if it's something you have to sort of set a moment aside to do. We'll see here. You can begin by viewing this as a meditation of sorts, since that's what you are most familiar with. Sit in a quiet space and contemplate the fact that you are already seated on a sphere that is suspended in unlimited space. There is no solid foundation of any kind underneath this sphere that is holding it up. In fact, you don't really know if your body is facing up, down, or sideways, because the universe has no boundaries of that nature. You could make the sun your point of reference, but where does that lead? Even if you could say that the sun has a reference point from inside the galaxy, you really have no idea about how this galaxy is situated overall. And what if the reference points don't even exist in this dimension? We feel such a need for all of these identifiable reference points because the ego needs that to feel secure. But you, as an infinite being, need no such reference points. You are wholly aware of where every single thing lies in the entire universe. You are already touching it. Now allow yourself to open up. Open up and welcome in the consciousness and energy of the cosmos in which you live. One other point should be stated here as an aside. We are embarking on a real experience of the real universe, which means that only love exists here. We allow no room whatsoever for any illusions of duality, fear, and all of its accompanying illusions. And here we should also point out that there is indeed a real Earth. This is the Earth that you have probably seen in what you thought was only your imagination. This Earth actually exists in the real world. There is no violence here, and there is no hate. Living beings do not eat other living beings in order to survive. Death is not the food for living. In fact, there is no death here and no such thing as reproduction. It isn't necessary. There is only the profound beauty that you see here every day in nature, without the duality and without the fear. The real Earth is indeed the paradise you have always suspected this would be, and that it should be. And that is only a tiny glimpse of the tremendous beauty and love that exists throughout this entire real universe. And lest you think that this real Earth exists in some etheric realm of dreams, think again. We, on this false planetary experience, are the ones living in a dream. The real Earth is more real than any of your physical senses could ever imagine. Its substance is so great and its light so strong that nothing could ever threaten its existence. There is no such thing as threat of any kind in the real world of omnipresent love. The real universe of which we speak does not exist in the familiar realm of after death, that which you hear so much about. Please do not imagine that death is the road to that of which we speak. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is no death in the real universe, and likewise there is no place to go after it because it doesn't exist. As you open up to the real universe of which you are a part, remember that in truth you are already here. You already exist as the unchanging infinite. This is very easy to see if you take a moment to notice a few things. Look into your own eyes without a mirror. Look at your experience from within. You will notice that although your physical face may change over the years, that you yourself never do. You do not need to look in a mirror to recognize yourself. You always know that you are you, no matter where you are or what you are doing. You do not need to keep checking in a mirror to make sure that you are seeing yourself. If you really were your physical body, then why wouldn't you freak out anytime that body goes through changes? And it does go through many changes. How come you don't panic and go running around looking for yourself when your body looks different than before? It's because you are forever rooted inside your infinite self, and you know that. No one has to tell you this. Yet you will go around erroneously stating things like, I am fat, I used to be thin, I am sick, I used to be healthy. The truth is that you are none of those things that are defined by this ever-present duality. You are experiencing a massive collective dream where everything exists by way of its opposite. So now we invite you to wake up and rejoin the real universe of infinite love. We invite you to remember who you are, the real you that you live with every day, but wholly ignore in favor of the ego, your substitute self. Who you are in this universe is not something to be attained. It already is. All that is required is your own acknowledgement of such. Take command in the truth of who you are. Take command of your life in this universe once again. You are a loving being of omnipresent truth. You are a loving extension of the arms and heart of God itself. Embrace yourself, embrace your life. Your life is not limited to this microscopic planetary sphere. The entire universe has been created just for you. Explore your true existence. Explore the love. Remember who you are. Okay. So that is the end of Chapter 8, Who You Are in the Universe. That was a very interesting chapter, a lot to take in. So I hope that gave you a little bit more to chew on, as maybe every chapter does. It's nice to have them on video because you can go back and listen to it again, which I find myself going back a lot. Got to read things or listen a few times before you can really grasp it. But hopefully, because we are supposed to be keeping in mind that we're going to take this information in with our heart. Hopefully that does help. I do know it has helped for me in staying aware of that and trying to keep my intention right there. So next video, we will be doing Chapter 9, Into the Light. So I hope, again, that you enjoyed this information that I have shared with you. And until next time, I hope that you have a wonderful, beautiful rest of your day or evening. Please like, subscribe, comment if you feel so inclined. I appreciate it so, so much. I love to know that even just one person is watching and hopefully gaining and taking in what they may feel resonates with them. My intention in reading these books is, first of all, never to expect anyone to agree with every single thing that's being said. That includes myself. But the books I read very much do center around ideas and beliefs and tools and things that most resonate with me. So that is just my hope for you as well, is just to take in what is your own truth and see what resonates with you, and, you know, just chew on it a little bit. It can take time to sort of kind of like siphon out, yeah, that's the word, what you want to hold on to and what you may not want to in anything that you're learning or anything you hear, as using discernment. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I love reading these to you guys. I love it so much. It's wonderful to share, and I will see you again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.